Thank you to our sponsors for supporting this episode of Troxel, BQE Core, and Avail. We'll share more about them later on in the episode. Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. This is the podcast where I have a conversation with guests from the architectural community and beyond to talk about the coevolution of architecture and technology. In this episode, I welcome Eitan Tsarfati. Eitan is a serial entrepreneur with vast experience in the construction sector. He first started his career as an architect and shortly thereafter became the co-founder of See My Casa, later dubbed Homestyler, a construction tech company he built and sold to Autodesk. After the acquisition, Eitan was the GM of Autodesk Israel, where he led a 200-employee R&D center in various construction tech products. His latest venture is called Swapp, where Eitan serves as CEO. The team at Swapp includes architects, designers, MEP engineers, AI experts, and data scientists who have joined forces to reinvent architecture and planning. In this episode, we get into the value proposition of the training and role of an architect and the practice of architecture in general in regards to solving complex problems versus spending valuable time drafting, the role that tools currently play in architectural practice and how that could be very different starting now and into the near future because of AI, existing business models including what I'm dubbing the time for money paradox that most firms operate within, and how AI and automation is significantly challenging the status quo, and how Swapp is capable of doing in seconds what has traditionally taken weeks or months. This is definitely becoming a theme for some of the guests on my show. I hope you'll listen to the conversation to hear just how much of the process his team has automated and what is included in the outcome. Spoiler alert, it's a deliverable inclusive of architecture and engineering disciplines, which is made possible by their intentionally holistic approach in team makeup. Be sure to check out the link in the show notes to see what Swapp is currently capable of. This was a fantastic conversation with Eitan, and I hope that you'll not only find value in it for yourself, but that you'll help add value to the profession by sharing it with your network. In addition to leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, it's the smallest act of generosity you can do to support this show directly and to help broaden the reach of conversations like these in my attempt to elevate the industry. I would also appreciate you visiting the sponsors who help make this episode possible. Thank you so much. So, without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Eitan Tsarfati. Eitan, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Evan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate this. This is going to be fun. I'm really interested in what you are doing with Swapp. I'm more interested in why you're doing it. I think there's some fundamental issues in the architectural profession that we need to grapple with, and that's really what this podcast is all about. It's about how technology and architecture are co-evolving together. We both know that a lot of architects ignore the fact that that's happening. The audience for this podcast is not that audience, that they're not those people. They're very much acutely aware of how technology is impacting or has the potential to impact the profession. And so maybe you can just give us a version of the story that makes sense for this podcast of how you got to where you are, a little bit of your history, so that people understand where you're coming from. And then we can talk about why you've decided to choose yourself to solve this or tackle this problem.
So, you mentioned that your podcast is all about technology and architecture. And if you ask me today if I'm more of a technologist or more an architect, I wouldn't know the answer. I started as an architect. I was never born as an architect, but I started as an architect. Some architects think that they were born architects. I don't feel that way. I studied architecture and I loved architecture, and I'm still loving architecture. I went to work in several firms, in architecture firms. We all know the drill. you start with small text and then you end up doing construction documents all day, right? So that's kind of this is how my career path has started. But I always had a technology side in me, from the get-go. Even from back in the school days, I wanted to do things, start from 3D modeling, physical modeling. I didn't want to do that in school. I just want to do something with that the software will do that for me. Some architects love it. I didn't. I hated it. So I actually, I convinced my professor to allow me not to touch any physical elements, but to do everything in the computer, which kind of encouraged me to stay in school.
That was the ticket. That's interesting for you to say that, because in my education, it was like, well, you've got to do the drawings, you've got to do the physical model. You can do other stuff too. It was like you said earlier, both always wins. It wasn't either or for me. It was, you had to do it all. So that's interesting that you were able to convince them to omit a piece of it.
I had to sell it. Today, I'm more of a salesperson. In a startup, when you're a founder or a startup, you're more of a salesperson.
That's what architects are too. Even if they don't want to admit it. Yeah.
Yes, they don't want to admit it for sure. So I had to sell the idea. And, I convinced him that I can convey my project as well as anyone else with physical models. So, through the computer generated models. So, and I did that. And I always looked for a technology to streamline the process. It was always on my mind. And, this is how I started working. My first startup was in 2007 when it started. After a few years in architecture, I founded See My Casa, which later on became Homestyler, which I sold to Autodesk later on. And it was all about generating the 3D scene immediately. That was kind of the goal. Not to model it, not to draw it, not to generate it by hand, but to do it automatically. And then we put a business model on top of it, and the manufacturers came on. It became a really successful business. I sold it to Autodesk and continued my path in technology in a way that I joined the company that everybody loves to hate and love at the same time.
Depend on, yeah.
Depend on, yeah.
Right.
I'm not sure in which side you're talking about, the hate part or love part, but I would probably say that the time at Autodesk was huge for my growth as a technology person, as someone who understands how to create software, how to measure users, how to measure, how people using software, how architects using software, construction people using software, and so on. So I spent some time in San Francisco in headquarters, came back to Tel Aviv to be the general manager of the Israeli R&D center for Autodesk. And that was a huge experience for me, coming from the user point of view as an architect all the way to the company that actually create the software that I actually used. So it's kind of if you think about this cycle, it's pretty amazing to study AutoCAD 12, I think, version 12 from a book, because there was no YouTube.
Right. There was no YouTube. There was barely a usable internet. Yeah.
Sounds so old, but there was no YouTube, and you couldn't find tutorials for that. You just, you had to open a book and you just go, function by function. What's amazing, some of the shortcuts that I learned from the book still exist today, right? It's pretty amazing.
Fundamental shortcuts, right? Yeah. Yep.
And this is kind of my career path. But I would probably say that in Swapp, I was looking to do something pretty different than what I've done at Autodesk or even the startup that I sold to Autodesk. I looked for something else. I looked for really tackle the problems that I saw throughout my career. And that was not to create another Revit or another AutoCAD or maybe another cool feature that can save a little bit more time. That was not my goal. I was thinking very, very hard. When I left Autos, I was thinking very, very hard about the role of the tools that we're using. The fact that architects that are listening now are using Revit or AutoCAD or ArchiCAD or SketchUp or whatever to do what they do, it doesn't mean that they have to do it the same way they do it today. Doesn't mean that it fits what they need today from the buildings that they build today. And I would probably argue that architecture haven't changed a lot. The architecture, the process, the planning process haven't changed a lot.
I do think that the programs that you're talking about, which everybody uses all the time, are very much just a digital version of what has always happened in architecture, right? And they're not coming up with new. There's obviously, I'm generalizing here. There have been nuanced changes, but as far as like level of detail that you can go into, you can get a lot more information into a set of plans now than you ever could before in the same amount of time that you used to spend to do something much more representative of what was built rather than what was actually going to be built. And so we do see the tools that we have today very much so in the replacement of the pencil, for lack of a better way to say it. A lot of people have said it that way, right? It's the digitization of the pencil, not the true potential of technology.
Exactly. And I feel the same way. And this was the trigger for Swapp, because I felt, both as an architect, as also from the side of the software developer, that people are using the software for the wrong things. And, and I looked at, the different verticals around us. I looked at multifamily assets, for example, and I looked at schools, and I looked at logistics centers. And, these kind of verticals, you look at this and all over the world, across the country, in the US or in Europe, in Israel, where I'm coming from, it looks the same. And the fact that it looks the same is also means that the planning looks the same. The planning process looks the same. And there's not a lot of creativity there. It's not why you and I went to school to study architecture. If you have to do a logistics center, you can convince yourself that what you do is really creative, or you are generating these logistics centers that is talking to the cultural environment of. But we all know the truth, and we all know that there are certain verticals that all you need to do eventually with the technology that exists today is to click on a button, and you'll have from A to Z the entire building in terms of planning. That's what I believe in after so many years as an architect and so many years as a software developer, that there's a lot of knowledge today, a lot of know-how, a lot of data that is available that you can actually take projects and not spend so much time on them. And that's kind of what triggered me to go for Swapp and actually think of, and let me be very bombastic about it, creating the world's largest platform for architecture. Because in a way, what we do today, what we succeeded, and we were still, of course, we have a long way to go. We succeeded to do is to take some of these verticals or sub verticals and generate the entire building, from feasibility or from sketch to construction documents in one click, which is pretty amazing. And we actually use Revit, for that matter, not as a drawing tool, but as a 3D environment to generate what we do, what the AI can generate. So, and this is mind-blowing in my view as an architect, because an architect would probably argue, hey, I have a building, I have to draw, there's a lot to do in order to plan this building. But what I'm arguing, that in certain cases, which are actually a lot of cases, you know how the building will look like, you know about the material, the design decisions are already there. I'm not talking copy paste, but you actually made up your mind how this building should be constructed. And all you have to do is software to take all the pieces together and generate what you wanted to achieve. And when we started doing that, we saw two different reactions from architects. One was, oh my God, you're going to replace architects. Like, I guess, people that use pen and paper when they saw AutoCAD.
People that draw for a living. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. They say, oh my God, they're going to replace me. Or people that did AutoCAD in 2D and then all the 3D, came in place. You say, oh my God, nobody will use our drawing skills and stuff like that. And, this part of the reactions, some reactions were different, but these are part of the reactions. And what I told them is that I think that I'm actually bringing back the joy in architecture, if you think. But I actually am bringing back the pen and pencil, if you think.
Interesting to think of it that way. This is the meat of the conversation that I want to have with you. I think that when you think about, are you familiar with this idea of the smiling curve? Have you seen the smiling curve? So I'll put a link to it in the episode's show notes. But basically the idea is that, okay, the x-axis is time, right? So time of a project, let's call it in this case for architects. This applies way beyond architecture, but if we apply it to architecture, X is time, Y is value. Okay. And so think about a curve that's the shape of a smiling, it's high at the beginning and it's high at the end and it's low in the middle. If you were to assign pieces of the process to that, what would you say are the highest value? Because I think that's what we're really talking about here. We're talking about the highest value that an architect has in the system. And we're already kind of foretelling the future. It's high in the beginning and it's high at the end, and it is the lowest in the middle, right? So let's just talk about that as an idea, because I think what we're actually talking about after hearing what you just said is we're talking about where our value lies.
Yeah, I would probably say beginning and the end, maybe like the smile, beginning and the end. And this is why I'm so surprised that so many companies are focused on the feasibility side. Feasibility is very nice. There are a lot of tools to create feasibility studies, but actually, they cut a lot of time. But it's a great tool for architects to use their brain power, which is great. I mean, use their brain power and solve a really complex site with all these constraints and, cultural limitations and effects and impact on the project. And, the code itself, you have to everywhere is according to code, and, the local authorities and what a specific clerk in a specific local authority likes or doesn't
Reference.
like.
Sure.
Yeah, and this is not for machine to solve.
Right.
This is sometimes when you do feasibility study in the tool we also generate some feasibility studies, add-ons and features. A lot of our customers are saying, but can you read the mind of our city architect? Or can you read the mind of this specific person who actually go over the plan? So I would probably say that the beginning of the project, there's a lot of value to the architect to understand, the complexity of where he is. And there's not a lot of time he will spend to solve this problem or to tackle this puzzle of what he's going to build there and how it's going to, affect the surrounding. And then if you go to the end of the project, when you have to see that everything is in place, according to plans, there's also, you can say, okay, technology will replace that because, there will be robots with computer vision that do the inspection. Yeah, okay.
But a lot of it's a feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, but in reality, you have to solve problems on site, even with all the technology that you have today. That say, oh, we're going to reduce the delays, or going to reduce the errors on site, and the job site will be perfect. Nothing will be perfect. Well, when people are involved in building, until everything will be built by robots, nothing will be perfect. And then you have the architect to come in and to do the construction administration, to do the inspection, and to see that everything is according to, and even solve some issues on site. I think this something is actually where architects will probably excel, in the future. But I would predict that the big chunk in the middle that you have to draw, from the DD, CD level, which takes months to do that, you'd probably not have to do that anymore.
I'm going to read to you. Yeah, I want to read to you what the steps along the smile are. And then I what you're saying totally makes sense. And I think there's different ways to apply this. One way we could apply it is to the architect's involvement in a project of a timeline, right? From conceptual design through construction administration. But you could also think of this from the value of perception of architects in the public, which could be for, as far as where ideas are coming from and what the value of those are applied at the site level, at the city level, at the community level, and beyond, all the way to how people actually experience those built things, right? So there's a couple different ways to apply it, but I'm going to read to you what on this graph, and this has more to do with products, but I think if we think of buildings as products for a minute, it'll make sense. The highest value in the beginning, if we again think about the smile, I'm going to read the steps from left to right. So at the top left is R&D, highest value, earliest in the project, right? Next is branding. So we're coming down the curve. We're descending down into the pit of despair, right? We have, so R&D, branding, and then design. At the bottom of the curve is manufacturing, right? So for us, that's the drawing that you're talking about. That's the process we go through. So this is the lowest value on the timeline. And then it starts to climb back up. Distribution, marketing, sales, and service. So the two highest points are R&D, which is the big ideas, right? And then the sales and the service, which to me is the client experience. Thinking about it from those two levels. And there's nuance to all that, but I think that this kind of maps with what you're saying as well, which is, and I guess the reason I really want to hone in on this with you make a tool that kind of takes that part out of the equation. How do we get architects out of their own way to understand that they should not be competing at drafting? Because that is the lowest value thing that they could possibly be spending their time doing. And guess what? They charge money for time.
For the hour, yeah. When you look at reports from the AIA, you see billable hours, mm-hmm. right? Billable hours is the way to build
as a metric.
Projects.
That's the metric, yeah.
But that's not a good metric, because this metric is not measuring value. It's measuring time, and this time can be actually replaced by automation, right? That's the whole thing. How do I convince architects to change their way?
The behavior. That's the hardest part, right?
I'll tell you the truth. I'm not trying to. I think that it will happen whether we like it or not, because it's a survival game at the end, and architects will just stay fixated on this notion of billable hours, and not willing to change. Other architects who will go with technology, understand the way things are progressing, will just take more jobs, be more efficient, and it will just happen on its own. It's
natural evolution, survival of the fittest model here. Right?
So and to tell you the truth, when I'm selling today, I'm partnering with a lot of architecture firms, We are partnering together. We're doing projects together. Um, when I'm coming to an architecture fair, I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm just asking them, okay, how much time do you spend here? I'm going to spend here. What if you can, by that time you can click swap and you can generate the entire project, like the entire project, and then oh my God, so that's kind of blow their mind. What are we going to do? How are we going to bill the hours, right? So I wouldn't say, hey, you don't have to tell your customer that it took you 10 seconds rather than 3 months. I don't want to say that, or a few days rather than 10 months. You don't want to do that because you don't want to lie to your customer. You want to better to say, hey, I'm going to charge by the value. I'm going to go to your customer and tell them, you pay me today, I don't know, 5% of the project cost, or dollars per square footage, which is a good metric, right? The larger the project, the dollars per square footage. What if I can give you the results 3 months earlier?
How valuable is that?
How valuable is that? Are you going to save overhead? You have people working on this project. Now you don't have to pay them, right? It just reduced 3 months from the project schedule. What if you have you paid interest to the bank, 3 months of for a specific site? What if you can get people to get in, to sell more apartments? For example, multifamily apartment, sell more apartments earlier in the process, so you can actually pay back your interest, right? So there's a lot of value of taking this, the project time and, getting it shorter. And actually the result, the inevitable result will be, from the customer point of view, hey, dear architect, we should pay you more. It's X plus dollars per square feet because you brought me more value. So that's the conversation I would love architects to have with their customers, to talk about the value that they create. And the value is actually, for architects, customers, the value is always about cutting costs, and generating more revenues, right? It's like the two sides of the financial statement. Yeah, if you cut costs, and generate more revenues for them, this is how, and when you show them that this is the case, they will pay you more. They will not tell you, hey, it took you just, 2 days to do that. Why are you charging me so much? This is a discussion that I would love to see between an architect and the customer.
I want to talk about that because since you said you are partnering with architects to deliver projects now, I would love to know how that part of it's going. So if you have any thoughts in a minute, let's jump into that. Before we go there, I want to talk a little bit about Swapp. You said a minute ago, generating the whole thing. And we've seen a lot of generators out there that generate concepts, massing, even linked to pro formas, right? With numbers that enable people to make decisions early, right? With lots of, in the feasibility time of a project. We've also seen ones that focus on making changes, and those changes ripple throughout the whole process so that you don't have to go back and coordinate all that stuff. But you said you generate the whole thing. I want you to elaborate on what that actually means so that people have an idea of what makes Swapp different than others that are out there.
Actually, this is the core of what makes us different. I think you mentioned it, and you mentioned very well, the different tools in different parts of the process, whether it's generating massing. Well, yeah, you can generate massing, but how long does it take to an architect to generate the massing?
It's fast.
Yeah, it's fast.
It's loose. I mean that on purpose.
Couple of weeks if he's doesn't have all the tools, and maybe one day if he's really great in Rhino or Revit or whatever massing. So this is one. You mentioned generating changes, and make it more And again, this is something that you do and you have to do, and it depends what the changes are. And this is something that we can get into later on. What Swapp is doing is actually by using AI and a lot of data. And I have to, to give it to the team. I'm talking and I'm kind of the salesperson. I'm selling you the idea, but we have a pretty smart team that are a combination of algorithm developers, which are like data scientists and machine learning experts, sitting together with good engineers, very highly skilled engineers. Half of the team came from Autodesk, from the top products of Autodesk. They know the industry and they know all the bits and bytes of what is a wall and what is a family and what is a group and everything in Revit and Beam, and it's kind of our language in the office. And you combine that with this is the other part of the team, with architects and consultants, traditional architects and consultants, which actually everything that they do today is not draw or model something by hand, is actually teaching the other side of the company, the algorithm developers, how they think and what it means to do the whole thing. What are the limitations? What are the constraints? What are the complexities? Hey, what if you do another column? How does it affect a below grade parking? How it create an obstacle into the algorithm to generate the entire thing in an optimized way, right? So it's super, super complex problems to solve, a lot of problems to solve in order to say, okay, I have eventually, and this goes back to your question, how we partner with architects. It goes back to, I have an idea. If I'm an architect, I have an idea for a specific site, and I'm coming to Swapp, and I'm saying, this is what I want to build here. Look at other buildings that I built. Use your data also. Swapp, please use your data in order to help me understand what I can generate. And then from, all this input coming into the system, you can say, okay, I want to generate DD level, and after that, CD level set of sheets for the project for the project to be built. And this, guess what? I want these CD level sheets. I want everything to be coordinated. I want the piers for the HVAC to be in place. I want the columns to work in specific distances that when a consultant come in, he's not going to have to ruin my entire design and just stick a wall in the middle of the living room because I just forgot it or I didn't think about it. There's all the things that we all know from our profession, and Swapp is solving it in one place under one roof. It's a very complex problem to solve, but it's doable with today's technologies, and if you have the right people in your company in order to do that. That's what Swapp is all about, and this is why I think it will change radically the way that architects will charge for their projects.
I think it changes a lot of other things radically as well, and that like, because I can see the future that you envision, and I wonder what you tell architects when basically you're telling them potentially you don't need the staff that you have. You need to sell your services way differently. It's going to take way less time. And a lot of people do see this as a fearful thing, like that it's going to replace them. And I know that you're talking to the leadership of the company, which is responsible for the business and for where the business goes and how profitable it is, and if there's shareholders and all these different things. And just thinking about it, like there's so much kind of uncertainty in this model that you're presenting, because you are saying we're going from concepts to CDs in what used to take X number of months into X number of seconds. Like that's a huge kind of, I'm sure a lot of people have to see it to believe it kind of a thing. But this, to me, you're upending everything for them potentially. And I'm wondering, you're saying you're partnering with architects. How are they receiving this? What has that been like for them? how existential crisis driving is this, right? Or is it something that they're welcoming? Let's take a quick break to share more about our sponsors. In this podcast, I talk a lot about all the realities with my guests, mixed reality, augmented reality, virtual reality, all the realities. And I've got a new message for you from my friends at Avail. Let's talk about the new reality, which is that content, as I've talked about in the previous message from them, both wants and needs to live everywhere. Long gone are the days of saving files to your local hard drive or to a single on-premises server. In order to solve remote collaboration, information has moved to the edge. The cloud is king, and the number of cloud services out there dictate that the number of storage locations will continue to grow dramatically. Where do you store your files? BIM 360, OneDrive, SharePoint, Box, Dropbox, AWS, Azure. Chances are you probably save them in some weird combination of those that I just mentioned, and more. Well, here's the point of this message. Avail hides the complexity of where content and information resides. What file to use used to be your biggest concern. Now it's where do all those files live. Avail takes where out of the equation, which means that with Avail you can actually find your mission-critical and not-so-critical files too, right when you need them. Avail helps get you the information you need faster. Go to getavail.com today to learn more. Systems and standard operating procedures. You already know that's how to build a profitable business and find the freedom you want. You need systems and procedures. But you struggle with choosing the systems you need most and how to implement those systems quickly so you can get back to doing what you love most. The Designing Your Business Masterclass series was created by an acclaimed architect and business consultant, Douglas Teager, FAIA, to help fellow architects and engineers run their firms more profitably while maintaining a healthy work-life balance. Douglas grew from a solo practitioner to become managing partner of his 30-plus person firm, and then later sold his firm so he can do what he does today, helping architects be more successful at Teager Consulting. On the third Wednesday of every month, Douglas dives deep into an essential topic that will strengthen the profitability of your firm and make it sustainable for growth in the years to come. Register now for the Designing Your Business Masterclass with Douglas Teager at bqe.com/masterclass and start implementing powerful systems for the profitability you need and the freedom you want. Every live masterclass session includes AIA continuing education credit, and when you visit bqe.com/masterclass, you'll have access to the full library of past sessions on demand. The Designing Your Business Masterclass is free, and it's brought to you by our friends at BQE, the makers of BQE Core, the software that makes it easy to manage your projects and people for maximum productivity and ultimate profitability. Register now for the next Designing Your Business Masterclass at bqe.com/masterclass. That's bqe.com/masterclass. And now let's get back to our conversation.
You have to really think about the solution and about the future that we present in a way that there's nobody to blame, first of all. If technology is there and can solve these problems, can do it, there's no one to blame. That's the one. If you think about, and you talk about two different segments, the leadership and the day-to-day people that just work in architecture firms. Of course, the leadership see it as a good thing. Hey, we're going to cut costs, we're going to be more profitable, more productive, and this is why they're partnering with us. And when I say partnering with us, is actually we share revenues with them. We bring customers to them. Sometimes we bring the customer to them and share the revenues. It's kind of a new idea of, hey, why are you giving us project? Because I think that you're good at what you do, and I'm good at what I do. It's a win-win. So I can bring you a project, and together we can do it even better than what I would do it alone, or you would do it all by yourself. So the partnership is a win-win for the leadership. You mentioned about the people and this dramatic change in the industry. I don't think it's so dramatic. if you think about it, let's say that a company has 50 employees or 100 employees, but they're doing today 10 projects. They don't have to lay off all these people. They can take 100 projects and do it with the same amount of people. And God knows there is a demand and there is a shortage in construction. So in a way, if you think about Swapp, I really feel that we contribute to this shortage of labor in both in construction and in architecture, and to the shortage of apartments, a shortage of the built environment that we have to do. And it's not only in the US, in many places in the world, you have to build really, really fast for the growing population. So it's not that there's not enough work. There's a lot of work, but 10 people, what 10 people can do today in an architecture firm, 10x that, they will do it in the future.
So how are firms that you are partnering with receiving and basically taking advantage of this? I'm just wondering, because I do really feel like we're talking about a behavioral shift. And so I'm just wondering how that's going, because I think that's a lot of people who listen to this show have been through this time and time again, is adoption, behavior shifts. Those are the hard things, right? Because you're talking about changing behavior, and there's things that architects hate. At the top of the list is change, right? So I'm just wondering how that's going for you, what you're experiencing.
One of the mistakes that we're doing sometimes in podcast and sometimes in software and in our industry is talking about architecture like it's one thing. I always tell a joke when every startup and every venture that I have an investor telling me, "Are you going to the European market?" And I always tell him there is no European market. There is the German market, there's the Spanish market, there is the UK market. It's different by culture, different by usage. There is no European market for that matter. And when we talk about architecture, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're saying architecture, but an architecture firm doing all day multifamily projects is not an architecture firm doing all day education projects. And we all know that there are architects that 99% of their work is education, or 99% of their is multifamily. Architects that doing single family, attached and detached, are not the same architects that doing hospitals. It's a whole different thing. There are architects that doing all around, but if you think about the profession and what you actually do on a day-to-day basis, it's very, very different. So, for what you ask, I would probably say that architecture firms that have a specific vertical that they, their expertise is there, working with us very well, because they are already they develop their own machine, kind of,
sure,
but without technology.
Yeah, right. They have their own algorithms, but they're encoded into something else. They're in people.
In people and in folders, and even if they have like Windows 95, and God knows that some firms have folders, everything's in place, they have a process, and it's a very, very streamlined process. And the change of behavior there, it's something that, okay, let's make our machine better, let's generate more, because we're already very effective at what we do, but we understand that there is a way to be more effective. Let's do that. Let's be more productive, because we already have this mindset. Architects that will just do villas, tailor-made private houses would probably say, "Hey, we don't understand what you're doing," and I would probably tell them, "I don't have anything to sell to you, right? Stick to your own thing. You're a different kind of architect. You're doing something else, or you're doing like this tailor-made interior design. It's not something that, maybe someday machine learning will would solve that too, but why? Why should someone develop something, to solve that? There's no actual reason. But if you think about, a larger chunk of the market, this is where Swapp is working today. And we are talking to working with people, architecture firms that doing education, logistics centers, multifamily. These are the companies that receive the idea very well. You'll be surprised how well they receive the idea, because they understand that at some point their creativity stopped and they became a factory for for their services. And they want to be profitable, and they don't want to have the customer tell them, hey, how much time did you spend on this, or how many hours, and they need to say, oh my God, we don't see a lot of margins on these projects. They want to be more productive, in order to get more, to get more profits to the leadership, or even to get better salaries to their employees. So these companies see us as a win-win, and this is where we focus today.
I could see that being a competitive advantage if they do think through it like that. I'm wondering if they're offloading risk by partnering with you, because we do see this a lot. Architects are very risk averse, right? And so adoption of new technology comes with learning curves and time investments and things that people can't take the time to do that, and the stuff they're doing right now. And you definitely can't just swap out A for B overnight, right? You can't swap out the existing way we do things for Swapp and be up and running. I mean, you could, but it's risky again. So that's why I'm wondering, like, are they're just putting that risk or pushing it down the road by partnering with you up front to kind of hold their hand and show them what's possible. How successful has that been for you? It sounds like it's the way you're pursuing business right now in many ways, but tell us like how that's working out.
It's very successful because they don't see us as a risk. When I come into a meeting with an architect, I present myself as an architect first and foremost. So, and I'm a true believer of technology companies that were founded by traditional professionals. Like, if you take the ecosystem,
you really understand the problem. Yeah.
You understand the problem, and you respect your customers, and you respect your partner. I'm not coming from, a patronizing point of view and tell them, hey, you should do that, do this or do that. Oh, why don't you use technology? Oh, I'm the software developer. I'm not saying that. And, there are a lot of companies in our ecosystem that were founded by, pure software developers. And I don't see a lot of success there. There is a reason to that. Because when they come to their customers, they're kind of an outsider. The discussion, they don't speak the same language. The discussion gets stuck when an architect is telling, this software developer, hey, what about, LOD this, or what about this detail that I need to be dynamic because it doesn't fit this kind of discussion is just stuck because the person who haven't spent 1 hour as an architect dreaming, forgive me for saying that, dreaming about trimming lines, or having nightmares about trimming lines.
Yeah, I've had those nightmares.
So if you didn't do that, there is no way you're going to convince the technology will solve the problem. But when I come to the meeting, I tell, hey, I'm an architect. I'm using it. I'm eating my own dog food. I'm using it for my projects. The construction documents generated by AI here, I review them. As I would review, a junior architect doing, the job for me. So there is no risk for them because I'm coming from their industry. I respect them very, very well. And, and actually, very much, very, very much being transparent of what I can or can't do, or what technology is good for or not good for.
Makes me think of if an architect has 10 projects on their plate right now, say their office is handling 10 projects, it would be very easy to say yes to, because that's what they need to cover, this year. It would be very easy to say, hey, let's do number 11 with Swapp this year, right? And just let's test those waters. Again, it's a little bit of risk aversion.
Evan, it's more than that. I'm telling you. They have 10 projects. And this is the state of the industry. There's no point of hiding it. They have 10 projects. They have a queue for these projects. They have customer banging on their doors and say, no, it will, I'm going to hand it to you in 2 months or 3 months, because they don't have enough people. And the younger generation is leaving to tech companies because young architects are very smart. They can be product managers and UX designers and do 3x, for the comp they do in an architecture firm. And the ones that already have experience, the ones that we have 5 years, suddenly leaves them and, leaves a hole in their firm. And suddenly they have these 10 projects and they don't know what to do with it. So you know what they do? They go to India to start drafting, outsource drafting, or Russia or something, that when the labor is very cheap, but then the quality
suffers.
It suffers,
and your reputation, yeah.
and when I come in and they see the outputs of the system, they say, let's work on project number 7 and 8 and 9, and you know what? Let's think about the system, how we can do the next 10 projects together. And this is what makes me believe in Swapp, in technology that is very scalable business, because you will not generate a solution for one project. You can generate a solution for the company design, for the design of this company, and actually partner with them for many projects to come.
So it's convincing. You're saying it's very convincing. Well, and something that I think about is, this actually came up over the weekend. Just thinking about how leadership in firms are disconnected from the people doing the work. And as we just kind of talked about the smile curve, where the lowest point of value in a firm are the people who are doing the drawings, which is, very much what we're saying in this conversation. And what we're saying is, instead of doing that part, you can be doing better things, right? Not just more things, but better things. Because I think a minute ago you were talking about doing more things, but I think we are actually talking also about doing better things, which architects, like you said earlier, went to school to learn how to do and have a bigger impact on the world. And I think about this from a more is not necessarily better, right? More projects, even though there's plenty of work out there, it doesn't mean that more is going to make me have a higher quality of life, more job satisfaction. In fact, it could be the opposite, right? More projects could be lower in those things because it gets monotonous. You're in this very much a assembly line mindset. So I there's a balance still to be achieved here. And I think the morale boost of not having to do the busy work that you're talking about taking out of the equation is a huge step in the right direction, so that we can focus our brain cells on more important things, the actual user experience at the end of the smile graph. What can we do to make people's lives better? So when they walk into an office or a building, a public building that an architect creates, their life is uplifted. That's what architecture has the power to do. It has the power to change people's perception and their experience and their day-to-day life.
Or simply put, what you've been doing in the 5 or 7 years that you spend in architecture school. This is what you studied for.
Back to that, right. Yeah, it's fascinating to think about this. So what are you excited about? Where are you guys going next? I mean, actually, before I get to that part, I do want to get back to something you brought up earlier. We'll end with the what are you excited about and where do you think things are going next? But you said something earlier about using Revit as part of this process. Can you just explain? Because I don't think we've ever actually even gotten to the point of you are doing through CD level drawings with AI, right? And so maybe we can just take a few minutes for you to really kind of lay out what the tool that you've developed does and how it potentially plugs into other things. I don't understand any of that, so maybe you can just spell all that out for us.
Now, a lot of people are bad mouthing Revit. There is, of course, it's not the perfect solution in today's world, and But today everybody's using Revit. Like 80%. I don't know. I don't know the actual. It's a big number. It's the majority of architecture firms are using Revit as their production tool, and I would argue it's not a bad tool for production. It's a bad tool for the design, the design thinking. When you're designing, if we could go back to the sketches with your pen and paper, this would be like the ideal, right? You have a pen and paper, you design, you are free, no limits. You have, or the limits that you know about. If you're an experienced architect, probably the design that you, the sketch, will be very, very accurate and by code from the first sketches, right? And Revit will not replace that. And you can probably solve the project, the main problems or the main issues in a project with pen and paper if you're a good and experienced architect. So, and when companies are using Revit from the starting point, I think this is where much of the frustration is coming, because it forces you to use all these constraints from the software, and you ended up with, hey, why it's not so creative, or why it's not dynamic, because I just use the same blocks and families and so forth.
And there's a lot of pressure inside of firms to try to limit the number of tools used, right? Like that's definitely another constraint that kind of pushes in the system, which is operations-wise. Can we limit everything to one application so that we can just train people in the one application, right? And the stuff is on this constant timeline of production and progression throughout, and it's all in one place, and everybody knows what that is.
Mm-hmm. And in a way, this is why we never called what we do a tool. Carl Bass, the former Autodesk CEO, once told, "Hey, we are tool makers." But I don't see what Swapp is doing today as a tool. Hey, here's a tool for the architect to go, dynamically, change and be very creative. That's not what we do. We're saying there are enough tools for that. The best one is the pen and paper. Go and use it, and use the best thing you can do. The schematic design you can do with pen and paper. Or if you are a little bit more advanced, quote unquote, go and do AutoCAD schematic designs. And this is it. You have enough design decisions there. We have a process in Swapp of how to get into the system more design decisions. So what is a room? What is, what are the connections between the rooms, and, the programmatic requirements and more like that. A lot of, let's call them financial aspects of a project. Are we going to do affordable housing? Are we, the construction efficiency? Is marketability is more of a, there's a lot of things inside that you can input to the system. You can, and what we're trying to identify from the beginning is who is our partner. What is the type? Because every architect has a style, and he loves using this cladding or this materials. So who is our partner? And then once you have that, and you combine it with a lot of data that we aggregated throughout the years, and you combine it with the very sophisticated algorithm, you can generate a really advanced and detailed design for the architect, either to continue, make some changes or do whatever he wants, or let's end the project, with Swapp, and see that, okay, this is good, it's compliant, all the details are there, all the sheets are there, and, let's move to construction, as fast as possible. So the process with Swapp is not really as a tool. It's more of a kind of a streamline of a process that took a lot of time, but now can be can be shortened radically.
So does the output of Swapp go into something else, or are you just explain how you're actually delivering the end result?
Construction documents as well, everybody knows them. Our output is Revit. In Revit, you can actually generate both the model and the construction documents, all the sheets in one place. Yeah, this is something that we found it very much comply with everything that the industry work with. If we chose to do it with, ArchiCAD, we probably get a niche, specific niche. But, and also if you work with AutoCAD, you can actually generate AutoCAD from Revit. So this is why we chose Revit.
So you're actually outputting an RVT file that then they're taking into their firm RVT template to produce the sheets with the title blocks and all the views and all that stuff.
And in RVT, you can actually, you can produce the sheets themselves. The sheets are inside the RVT file, so you can actually generate everything there. You would say, you could generate construction documents with Swapp in a PDF. Just, export to PDF, everything you have in PDF. Or you can generate, export to Revit, everything is in Revit.
How much user intervention or opportunities are there to, as an architect, right? We're deciding stuff that people don't even think about deciding, like where a section cut goes, for instance, because that's going to be a view on a sheet somewhere, a wall section versus a building section that jogs to show something important about spatial relationships or whatever. How much direct user intervention do you have over the AI, to make those kinds of decisions along the way?
Swapp will generate the base for you. We all do sections in specific places. I don't know one project that didn't do a section in the elevator core. We'll always have the section in the elevator core. If you have terraces, balconies, you always do section in balconies. If you have corridor, you always do a section in corridor and see the HVAC system, the heights, everything there. There are places that every project, and when when you use the data in our system, and the data is kind of learning where people put their sections, you get not surprising results that there are places that are key for understanding the building. So we generate this, but once we generate the output for our partners, it's easy because they can take the Revit files, generate their own section, generate their own thing, whatever.
So is it a handoff to get to Revit, or does it stay an active part of the process in Swapp beyond that?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. There are changes that you can take back into the system. We usually call them changes with cascading effect on the projects. Or if there are local changes that there's no point to use, the power of AI and automation to do that because, hey, I just wanted to change something in the lobby. It doesn't affect the whole building. I just want to design something there. Just go ahead and design it. The human can do it better than any other software, and I think this is where architects can take our work and not bring it back to the software.
You guys are also doing a lot of engineering consultant type AI driven stuff as well. When we talk about architecture, it's more than just the shell of the building. It's all of that stuff. It's all of the bones. It's all of the systems. It's the nervous systems. It's the circulatory system. It's all this. So I think you guys are doing that part of it as well. And obviously a lot of that is algorithm driven. Is that something where you're bringing these other team members in early as well to help drive what those algorithms are ultimately outputting?
I think what makes us really different in the market, even in traditional market, not even in technology market, that we have these disciplines. We have these consultants in-house in Swapp, so on our team. So when we have a project, we're not solving it just for the sake of the design, the architectural design. We solve it as a building. If you think about construction documents, there are not construction documents until you actually had all the consultants say, yes, these are the construction documents. This is part of the problem in the industry that sometimes disciplines are so fragmented and divided that everybody work on their own silo, and then when they meet, oh my God, we didn't know that HVAC should be, the building will both have HVAC and bearing walls. Yeah, surprise. So
So, and by the way, I don't know why in architecture schools they're not really teaching you that, right?
No.
It's, if you think about it,
We're a silo. We're
nobody,
an island unto ourselves. Yeah.
yeah, nobody told you, hey, architecture is not, it doesn't worth much if the building didn't have like all the consultants do their thing, right? So I think that, this is something lacking in architecture schools today. And I think this is what differentiates us. But I can tell you something. Again, it's not to replace the different consultants. Every project that we do, there will be consultants coming in and say, okay, we need to change this or change that. But the main thing is that it will not change the project radically, that you'll have to rework the whole thing or, redraw the whole thing or, redesign the whole thing. I think this is where Swapp is very good at. If you ask me in a few years from now, I don't know what will happen, but today this is our process.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So let's do a little bit of that and finish off the show with, what are you excited about with where things are going? Where do you see things potentially going? Because I think that it's incredibly exciting what you're talking about, and I'm hoping firms will definitely check it out, especially leadership in firms, to start to think about this, because there are so many implications to this. There are business model implications. There are staffing implications. There are the way that we talk about architecture and where its value is implications. What are you excited about with where things go, so that they have kind of an idea of where the stars may be leading them in the future?
I'm very excited about how the industry is changing. You take 10 years ago, the industry looked completely different. People were not very, they didn't adopt technology. It was not undermined. 2007, when I did this startup about about construction, the term construction tech or prop tech didn't exist. You went to a VC and he told you, construction. Why are you doing construction and technology and architecture? Why? You have to convince them that there is such a thing. Why don't you do something for, cool app for the iPad? It just came out, right? That was kind of the mindset of, back then. What I'm really, really excited about is this tide effect. Today we live in a different world. Look what's going on. You have a podcast about technology and architecture. I would guess that every week you find something new and exciting to talk to, and someone to talk to. And after that, there are like few others coming. It's mind blowing how technology is getting into construction so fast, and how adapting the companies are. People used to say that, oh, construction is so conservative and nobody's adopting technology. It's very much changing today. And I think it's changing because there was a tide effect of startups coming in. A lot of money was pouring into this market because, VCs kind of recognize, hey, there's a blue ocean here. Trillions of dollars, without a lot of technology, let's move from cyber, let's move from all these things to construction. And then the solutions that companies developed got matured, and then the industry started reacting to that. And companies today, and you said, hey, how architects are, receiving what you're saying. You'll be surprised, Evan. You'll be surprised. They are welcoming us and saying, oh my God, we want to be a part of it. We understand that the industry is changing as fast, and we need to be there. So this is why I'm so excited, because the things that I experienced in 2007, 2008 are very much different than what I experienced today.
Yeah, big shifts. Well, I'm excited for you, and I'm rooting for you. This is fantastic news. I'm really happy to hear that you are being welcomed and that the industry is excited about what you guys are doing. And I think in general, and that's really what this show is about, it's kind of exposing that and taking people along the ride so that they're aware of it, and technology like what you're offering with Swapp. So definitely excited about that. Where can people find out more about Swapp, see the the technology in action, things like that. And I'll include all the links to anything that you want to mention now in the show notes for people to see.
Very easy. Swapp.net. Swapp with double P, SWAPP.net. Look it up. We have a very easy to fill in form. You can just write your name, what you're looking for, and we'll get back to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Eitan. This has been fantastic conversation. And there's so much more I think that we could talk about when it comes to the true value of architectural training and thinking, and that is potentially being misapplied in so many ways in so many firms. And I really feel like this is kind of the door, a peek through the door. The opening has really opened up and to see what's possible. So definitely been a fantastic conversation. Thanks for having it with me today.
Appreciate it, Evan. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you to Avail for their support of this podcast episode. Visit getavail.com to see their holistic approach to content management today. Thank you to BQE, the makers of BQE Core, for their support of this podcast episode. Visit bqe.com/masterclass to register for the next Designing Your Business Masterclass. This show is part of the Gabled Media Podcast Network. You can see all the shows at gabledmedia.com. That's GABLMEDIA.com. You can help support what I'm doing here by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts to help get the word out, and of course, share it with your friends. I'd love to hear from you, so leave a comment on the website at trxl.co/podcast, where you can find every episode. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Just search for E. Troxel. Talk to you soon.